Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we are live with another Freight Broker Bootcamp live training, which I do every Monday at noon. So whether you're catching this on replay or you're catching this live, welcome and thank you for joining me. Today, we are going to talk about the 5-stage freight broker sales funnel, right? So I'm going to describe what I call the 5-stage freight broker sales funnel for you today. We're going to talk about that. We're going to do an overview of that. And then at the end, we're going to do some Q&A. But if you're catching this on replay, do me a huge favor. Hit me up in the chat box. Let me know #replay. I'd love to hear if you're live or on replay. I always like to know how you guys are catching in this information because it's important for me to be able to deliver good content. And so I know a lot of people are just kind of logging on now. If you are just getting on now, do me a huge favor and type in the chat box the city and state that you're logging in from. I'd love to hear from you. I'm in the Buffalo, New York area, which is actually a little suburb of that called Clarence, New York. Lifelong resident here in Western New York. And I'd love to hear where you're from. So I'll be able to give a few shout outs. And again, for those of you that are just jumping into the live stream here, today we are going to talk about the 5-stage freight broker sales funnel. This is very important. This is a very fundamental part of being successful in sales as a freight broker. If you do not have this information, if you do not understand the fundamentals of this process, you will struggle in getting new clients. You will struggle getting new shippers, and therefore you will struggle moving any loads or generating any profits. So today we're going to go over that. So before we dive into that, let's give a few shout outs. Dove from New York, welcome. Paul from Frisco, Texas. Welcome Zon Stevens from Charleston, South Carolina. Jay Gill from Georgia. Welcome Island Spice 7 from Douglasville, Georgia. Abazaki from Philly, welcome. Alvaro from El Paso, Texas. Kendra from Arnis. I don't know. Maybe it's Arkansas Pass, Texas. Chase from Vegas. Welcome, Chase. One of my favorite places to visit. Cole from Houston, Texas. Darius from Monrovia, California. Welcome, Sugar Plum from Pennsylvania. Welcome, Doyle from Georgia. Welcome, Victor from Odessa, Missouri. Welcome, Tierra Kendrick from Atlanta, Georgia. We've got a lot of people from Georgia. Wow, what's going on with Georgia? Georgia's in the house today. Holy cow. Welcome, Aruk from Santa Clara, California. Welcome. Oh, geez, it just shot up here. Sorry, give me a minute to try to catch back up here with the stream. Welcome, Adrian from Connecticut. Mikhail from St. Petersburg, Florida. Doyle from Atlanta. Pamela. Welcome, Abuzaki from South Philly, or South Jersey. Albert from Phoenix. Pamela from Augusta, Georgia, another Georgia. Wow. Eduardo from Vegas. Joe from, nope, Joe's not from anywhere. He just said, hey, Pamela, shout out. Welcome, Michelle from Springfield, Ohio. Evelyn from Tampa, Florida. Priscilla from Sacramento, California. Well, listen, if I don't get to your name, don't take it personal. Join me next week and I will try to give you a shout out. But today, I want to give a special shout out to my Freight Broker Bootcamp students. There are a lot of people that are on this live stream and are going to catch this on replay that are already a part of my Freight Broker Bootcamp online training program. So if you're already a student or you've already taken my online course for Freight Broker Bootcamp, do me a favor and hit in the type in the chat box #student. I want to try to give you a special shout out for joining me live and being a part of the community. Just so you guys know, Freight Broker Bootcamp is an online training program that I started over a decade ago. Over 10 years ago, I launched that program. Since then, we've trained over 8,000 students. I think it's probably 9,000. I haven't checked the numbers recently, but over 8,000 students have went through that online training program. We have like a 97% customer satisfaction rating. It's crazy. And we offer a 60-day, 100% money back guarantee. So if you guys are curious, if you're in this stream and you're curious about becoming a freight broker and you're just kind of starting your journey or you've been on the fence debating on whether it was right for you, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. No pressure. Again, 60-day, 100% money back guarantee. You won't be disappointed. All right. So shout out to some of the students. Let's see who we got here that are students that are already a part of the program. Here they are. I knew they'd show up. Welcome. Again, big shout out to Francis. Big shout out to Zon Stevens. Big shout out to Priscilla. These are all students, current students of Freight Broker Bootcamp. Big shout out to Kendra. Big shout out to Eduardo and Pamela and Charles and Alvaro and Michelle and Jordy and Tej and Kaylee, and the list just keeps on going. And I want to give you guys a big shout out. Thank you so much for joining me. Whether you're already a student or whether you're just discovering me for the first time, whether that be on YouTube or Facebook, I truly appreciate you being here. Today, we are going to go over the 5-stage freight broker sales funnel. I'm going to give you an overview of this 5-stage freight broker sales funnel. And those of you that stick around to the end, we're going to do live Q&A. And I am also, after this quick lesson, I'm also going to share with you a little bit of information about my new Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program that's going to be launching here probably in the next week. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit of that information. And I'm also going to share how you can get on the waiting list for that new program that's going to be releasing. So hang tight. Let me get through the information. I took quite a bit of notes here, okay? Because I want to make sure I cover the topic properly for you guys and draw you a good picture. And so again, thank you for joining me today. We are going to talk about the 5-stage freight broker sales funnel, right? And so let me give you a quick acronym that we're going to be talking about today. It's AIDAR. Okay, there's five letters in that acronym. I should say AIDAR. You may have heard of something similar before. This is slightly different, but the same fundamental concept, right? And A stands for awareness, right? I stands for interest. D stands for desire. A stands for action. And R stands for retention. So those are the key components that we're going to go over as a part of the five-part freight broker sales funnel. Okay, so those are the 5 components we're going to talk about today. Now, if you've heard of this before, something similar before, I want to just give you a quick backdrop. AIDA is an acronym developed back in like 1898, like prior to 1900, by an advertising pioneer. His name was E. St. Elmo Lewis, right? And he was an advertising expert, right? And so he pioneered that AIDI, which is awareness, interest, desire, and action. Some people in the more modern world have also, and particularly in the sales world, have also added the retention component to the last one. That's why it's 5 letters and 5 stages versus 4, okay? So I'm going to go over these 5 stages with you very quickly, and then we're going to do a live Q&A at the end, and of course, I'm going to give you some more information about the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program that is about to launch here in the next week or so, okay? All right, so awareness, right? Awareness is the first stage in the buying process for anybody, whether they're a shipper or buying almost anything, whether you're a consumer or you're a business buying a product. Awareness is the first stage, right? And so it's the salesperson's job as a freight broker. It's your job to catch the prospect's attention, right? And make them aware that you exist, that your products and services and business and company, and that you exist. So awareness is the first stage. And that usually comes in the form, when you're in the sales arena as a freight broker, that usually comes in the form of some sort of an outreach, either by phone, which is usually a cold call, or an email, which is a cold email, or maybe using social media like Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or some other social platform. So the awareness stage is typically, it's the first stage, and it's where you are doing some sort of an outreach as a salesperson to make the buyer aware that you exist. All right, so that's the first stage. Without awareness, we can't go anywhere. Okay, so we have to create awareness. And so that's stage number 1 is awareness, right? Some people, and I also like, that A can also stand for attention, because you have to get that buyer's attention to keep that prospect engaged throughout the different stages and throughout the process. So awareness and attention are kind of one and the same when it comes to stage number one. Okay. Now, stage number two is interest, right? That's the I in the AIDAR, right? So in order to go from awareness to interest, right, in order to bump them to the second stage, you have to develop the potential buyer's interest in your product or service. And in this case, it's freight brokerage, right? So whether you specialize in some niche, whether it be some sort of equipment or some sort of industry or specific lane, or some sort of service that you provide, whether that be cross-border or international or small, or LTL or partials or truckload or expedited or whatever your niche is, right? You've got to develop the potential buyer's interest in your service, right? And this is usually where you start discussing the benefits associated with your service, with what you do, right? So the interest stage is where you start focusing heavily on the benefits to the buyer, right? What are the benefits to them, right? So that's the interest stage. That's how we start to develop interest in your service, right? Is focusing in on the benefits. Because remember, it's not about you. It's all about them, right? All right. And then the third stage of this is desire, right? So this is where in the third stage, the prospect realizes that you have a good service, right? And it could possibly help them in some way, but now they've got to have enough desire to actually make the decision and move forward, right? This is where the salesperson, brings the prospect to a point of going from general benefits to specific benefits, right? And this is a lot of times where I will, in stage 2 and 3, interest and desires, a lot of times where I will introduce social proof as a way to build that rapport and build that trust and to tell that story of the benefit versus just saying the benefit. So that's an example. So we went from awareness, which was step number 1, to interest, which was step number 2, to desire, which is step number 3, right? And stage number 3. So we have to follow this order, right? You can't go from awareness to desire, right? You got to go from awareness to interest to desire. And then we go into action, right? And the fourth stage of it is, occurs when the prospect decides to take action and become a customer, right? They give you as a freight broker, they give you your first load, right? They give you your first load. That's action. And so, if you carried the prospect through the first 3 stages, right? The fourth stage, the action stage will in many cases just happen very naturally, right? It will just become a part of the flow. You won't have to close them, so to speak, right? But in some cases, you will have to ask for the order. And of course, that's part of the action stage, right? And so that's step number 4, that's stage number 4. And stage number 5 is retention. This is a really important one. And this is the reason why my description of this differs a little bit than most people. And that is, it's not just AIDA, because as a freight broker, your business is based on repeat and recurring business. If you got a shipper and you only moved 1 load with them, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be very hard to build a large and highly profitable and sustainable business. The key to freight brokerage is that when you do business with a client, even if you only move 1 load a week, right? Let's just move 1 load a week. And let's say the average profit on that load is $150, just average small profit on a load, right? In 52 weeks, I don't know about you, but that's $7,800 a year in profit just doing 1 load a week, right? So that repeat and referral business is really, really important. So the retention piece is where you create opportunities for long-term mutually beneficial relationship. This is where you have a recurring relationship with them. And once a customer selected you as a supplier, you don't just let them walk away. It's not just about getting that first shipment. The first shipment should lead to the second shipment, which should lead to the 10th shipment, which should lead to a long-term relationship. This is where, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, you start thinking about the lifetime value of a client, the lifetime value of a shipper. And the lifetime value of a shipper can literally be millions and millions of dollars if you have the right relationships with the right shippers, right? So again, we just looked at a very simple example. we walked through the basic framework, which was AIDAR, which is awareness, interest, desire, action, and retention. So this is a framework that I teach as a part of your sales process. This will be a part of a framework that will be a part of the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. So there's a lot of other components to it, but this is definitely a framework which will help you as a salesperson, as a freight broker, to make sure that you build your funnel, your sales funnel, in such a way that it becomes highly effective and converts into clients. Because again, if you do hundreds of phone calls and you don't hundreds of phone calls or hundreds of emails, and you don't understand the fundamental components of this AIDAR, right, you're going to struggle. I promise you, you're going to struggle. Now, you don't have to be, an expert in sales, or you don't have to be an expert in advertising in order to understand the fundamentals here and understand the progress through the funnel, right? So you know that the funnel looks like this, and at the top is going to be awareness. That's going to be the most number of people we're going to have. And then the next one is going to be an interest, and the funnel keeps closing in and closing in and closing in. And then you've got action, and then you've got retention, of course, and that's going to be the smaller number. So out of every 100 people you talk to, you might only end up with a few clients out of that. But those few clients, if you do the retention part properly, can add up to tons of money, tons of opportunity, and long-term, highly profitable relationships. So that's the 5 stages of a freight broker sales funnel. That's the 5 stages that every buyer goes through during their journey, whether that be in the as a freight broker, as a freight agent, or almost any industry, whether that be consumer to business to consumer, selling a product like a computer or a bottle of water, or as a B2B service provider like freight brokers are, where you are doing outreach to those decision makers, and then you're taking them through that process. Okay. So I hope that helps. If you guys are curious, again, hold on tight, because we are going to do some live Q&A. But if you guys are curious about the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program, okay, that Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program, sorry, guys, I lost you there for a second. If you guys are curious about that Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how you can get on the waiting list, right? So I have a waiting list for my new Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. Now, this program is going to be me taking this piece of my brain that I've learned about sales and getting new clients over the last 25 years and transforming it and transmitting it into your brain, right? So this is what I'm calling my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. There are really 2 conditions before you decide to get on the wait list, okay? One is you have to understand it's not free, all right? There's going to be a charge. I haven't defined what the cost is going to be. It's probably going to be somewhere between $500 and $1,000. I haven't figured that out yet. It's very inexpensive in comparison to the type of information you're going to be getting. One client leveraging some of the strategies and techniques I'm talking about is going to give you a 10x or more, return on your investment, right? So it's not free. Number 2 is if you're looking for something magic script, or you're looking for some sort of magic rebuttal or magic email or magic system or push button where you can just go out and get clients, this is not for you, right? This is a sales accelerator program that's based on my system of selling, of learning how to sell. It's going to include cold calling. It's going to include cold emailing. It's going to include using, other social media tools. It's going to include how to handle objections. It's going to include, conversation starters and all kinds of other strategies that I've used. And the system, which is fundamental of this AIDAR, is the framework that's going to be built behind the entire system. So if you guys want to get on the wait list, just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/FB sales. Now, if you're not on the wait list, you probably will not even have an opportunity to get enrolled. But just know, I'm going to limit this first release of the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator to about 50 people. Now, We've already got way more than that on the wait list. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to release this and try to be fair to everybody. When I do release it, it's going to be first come, first serve. So I'm going to send out a message to everybody, let them know that it's released. And then at that point, they're going to be able to enroll in the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. I'm excited because this is something that you guys have asked me for close to a decade now. And I've gotten hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of requests to create this course. And I finally got off my butt and I decided to do it. So that's what we're going to talk about during the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. If you're not ready for that type of an advanced type of program where you're learning really high-level sales strategies, and you're just getting started, you may want to check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com, which is my online introductory course. That's the course that over 8,000 students have went through. We offer a 60-day, 100% money-back guarantee. I highly recommend that if you are not already a freight broker, freight agent, that you go through Freight Broker Bootcamp first. Right? That would be the step one. And then step two, after that, once you're up and running or you've already went through that course, then you could get involved with the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator in a future launch because it's going to be launched now, but then it won't be available. The challenge will be is that the price is probably going to more than double. It'll double or triple in that next launch. I'm giving a huge discount to people that are kind of early adopters and founders of this newest Freight Broker Sales Accelerator launch. So I hope that all makes sense. I know I talk really fast, but you can always catch this on replay and replay this over. So why don't we move into the Q&A? I'm going to grab a quick drink. We'll jump into some Q&A and then we'll go from there. So if you guys have questions, all right, remember, if you want to be a part of the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, because I'm going to have to take this down in a minute when I do my Q&A because this will disappear, make sure that you go right now to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/FB sales. That will give you a link where you can opt into the wait list, and then you're going to get notified here in the next week or so when I release that and be able to get enrolled in that program. Okay, you'll get full details and be able to get enrolled. But right now, I'm giving you a little bit vague details because I'm finalizing all of those as we speak. So I'm excited. We'll jump into some questions here in a minute. Feel free to fire your questions in the chat box. And I'm going to jump into as many as I can. I may or may not get to all of your questions today. Hopefully I will. But if I don't, sometimes I can come back in later and respond later in the week through the thread. And if not, join me next week. I have a lot of the same people over and over and over again that are in these trainings. And I'm seeing, and they're starting to see great results. A lot of them have already gotten their authorities or already set up as agents. They're starting to make their first sales calls. They've started doing their first rating with great quotes. Some of them are starting to get their first clients. So the more you immerse yourself into this type of a training environment where I can take that piece of my brain and help you to leverage it for your startup, the faster you're going to accelerate your growth. Okay? All right. Cool. All right. So nobody's having any issue with the video now, are they? I think there was a little bit of a glitch in the video, but you're good now. All right. So let's jump into some questions here. All right, so let's see. All right, so what do we got for questions, guys? Are you guys seeing me? There's no issues? You guys are seeing me, right? There's no issues? If you have questions about the 5-stage freight broker sales funnel, or you have questions about startup or freight brokerage, you're becoming a freight agent, whatever it is, if you have any issues or questions around there, let me know, okay? Because this is the time. We're going to do Q&A, right? All right, so here's a question from Kevin James. I just purchased your program last night, the gold package. Is that enough for me to get started? Absolutely, 100%. I would strongly suggest that if you just enrolled in that program, go through all that material, go through all that information, go through that process, go through everything that's in there, and then make sure you get your questions answered through support or maybe through one of these lives, right? And then from there, you can assess the gaps or some of the challenges you might have, because the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is definitely going to help you accelerate, but I think having those fundamentals of the Freight Broker Bootcamp online training program, which does include, some sales training, and it does include how to get customers. It does include that. The challenge is that is not a very specific sales training program. That's an overall program that's designed to help you as someone who has no experience in logistics get started as a freight broker and freight agent. So I can't just spend the entire time talking about sales, right? So this training that I'm putting together is a supplement to the people that take what I have in the Freight Broker Bootcamp program, implement it, and then need and want more to accelerate their growth, right? And so that's where the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program comes. Most of the people that probably get enrolled in the program are going to be past students of mine, people that were students, months ago and have already went through the training, or even years ago and have an established business, but are looking for some help to get over the hump when it comes to closing more deals, getting more shippers through sales, right? So I hope that helps. Good question. Thank you for joining, Kevin. Look forward to helping you. Okay, stage 4, I'm going to go through the 5. Stage 1, A, awareness. Stage 2, interest. Stage 3, desire. Stage 4 is action. Action is where your prospect or the shipper takes action to start doing business with you, right? This is where they give you their first load, right? So they take action. So it's part of that workflow. It's part of those 5 stages, okay? So, and then stage 5, of course, is retention, right? That's where we retain the client and we develop that lifetime value that can be so valuable in the logistics industry. Here, just so you guys know, I know brokers and I know agents that have less than 5 clients and are doing over $1 million a year in sales with them and have been for years because of the lifetime value and because of the retention component that they understand, right? So you don't need hundreds of clients in order to build a highly profitable freight broker, freight agency business. I promise you don't need hundreds of clients. Honestly, you really only need, in most cases, probably 10 to maybe 20 or 30 clients, depending upon the size or the niche or the types of product or, types of service you're offering. But yeah, you don't need a huge customer base, right? So think about it. That Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program, even if it were, I don't know the amount it's going to be, but even if it were $1,000 and you got one client out of it, just one small client at $150 a week, that's $7,800 a year in profit. Now, if you have that client for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, you can see how that multiplies, right? So good question. Thanks for asking. Joseph asks, I have a bond. I don't technically need insurance, correct? All right. So depending upon the state that you're in, you may or may not need, and how you have your business set up, you may or may not need general liability or workers' comp insurance. Chances are you're not going to need workers' comp if you don't have any employees, which is fine. And you're highly probably not going to need general liability, although it's very inexpensive. So to become a freight broker or a freight agent, you don't have to have insurance. But to become a freight broker, you absolutely have to have your $75,000 freight broker surety bond. Don't let that scare you off. You don't need $75,000. It's a bond. It's more like an insurance product. Most cases, you can get your bond for an annual premium of somewhere as low as maybe $1,200 a year to maybe up to a few $1,000s a year, depending upon your credit. Okay, but it's very manageable. All right, good question. Thanks, Joseph. I'm just reviewing some of the questions. Give me 1 second and I'll be right with you guys. Okay, will the Freight Broker Bootcamp training be updated? We update the training on an ongoing basis. There are links and resources inside the training that sometimes become outdated because other websites, outside websites will change, even the FMCSA, right? which is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, their links change. So a lot of times we'll have to update them. Things will change. Companies will get acquired. We'll have to change the links. We'll have to change the content. So we change the content on an ongoing basis. And so, yeah, anytime a student brings to us something that, is outdated, or we do a review, we update it ASAP, but we do that on a regular basis. So yeah, so the training is continually updated over time, as should every training program. All right, sorry, I lost we got a whole bunch of questions here. All right. All right, so here's a question from Jordy. As a new broker, what's the best way to get past the experience aspect when cold calling? Okay, so here it is. There's only 3 things you can do. 1, get trained. You have to understand and invest in training around whatever that is. If it's sales that you're concerned about, then you have to invest in training. I'm assuming you've already done that. You're here, Jordy. You're doing that right now. Second is you can practice, right? You can practice on your own. You can practice your sales presentation. You can practice making these, particularly the sales presentation. You can practice overcoming rebuttals. You can practice what you've learned. And then the third, and there's no replacement for this, is just doing the work, making the calls, making the mistakes. Here's the thing. This is the hard part that most people have to get over. We all suck before we're good. But the problem is everybody wants to be good when they first start. I'll tell you the story, and I've said it before. I started my first sales job while I was still in college in 1992. Now, I know I'm dating myself. I don't look anywhere near that old, except my bald head. And I started in 1992. I was a broke college student. I needed money. I started a sales job. It was a phone sales job. It was an inside sales job. I was making phone calls. And I was admittedly the worst salesperson they had ever hired. And to this day, I have no idea why they didn't fire me. I have no idea. I sucked. I was terrible. But I invested. I read about sales. I listened to other people that were good at sales within the company, and I emulated them. And then I put it to work, and I went through the hundreds of phone calls that it took for me to start really understanding the fundamentals and to hone my craft so that I could get my first customers. But here's the good news. 6 months later, I was one of the top salespeople in the entire company, and I had no background in sales. So it's something you can learn quickly, but you can't really replace those steps. 1, get trained. Number 2, practice. And number 3, do the work, right? You got to go through that. You got to embrace the suck. You've got to be willing to suck before you're good. I can tell you this, your first phone call, you're going to be terrible, and that's okay. Your 10th phone call, you're going to be better. Your 100th phone call, you're going to be significantly better. And every 100 phone calls and conversations that you have after that, you are going to grow if you focus on growth, if you focus on refining your skills and your talents, which is really what I've been. I'm a student. One of the things that I'm probably best at is becoming a student, immersing myself in whatever it is I'm trying to learn. And that's been part of the secret to my success, as well as the fact that I have really thick skin and a high pain tolerance for rejection. So those are other things that you definitely want to develop as well. So hope that helps, Jordy. So Edna, is the shipper contract that's located in the program the standard that can be used with all shippers? There is no standard that can be used with all shippers. You will probably need some level of customization. That is a template and a baseline that you can use to get started in regards to develop your shipper broker agreements, right? Your shipper broker contracts. So I would not say it is the end all be all, will work in every situation and has everything you need. I will say it is a good fundamental starting point that you can develop upon. right? So I'm going to be very honest with you. Now, I don't want to mislead you. I want to be upfront with you about that. We include all those contracts like the shipper and broker agreement, the carrier broker agreement, the broker agent agreement. We include all those in the Freight Broker Bootcamp training program, but those are templates and fundamental starting points for any of those. Now, some of those are going to be able to be used right out of the box, depending upon the application. Others, you may have to do some limited amount of customization to. So I hope that helps. All right, so here's an interesting question from Abuzaki, which is, what's your short list for supporting new freight agents? Okay, so the short list for supporting new freight agents. All right, so some things that you can do to support new freight agents is, obviously you have to have good technology, right? So you've got to have some sort of transportation management software. That's going to be a primary component to supporting your agents. Number two, depending upon the level of complexity or the experience level of agents, I'm going to assume that most of them don't have a lot of experience as a freight broker and don't have a book of business. You're probably going to want to do some training. And I would say weekly training, ongoing weekly training about some of the challenges that they are going to run into as a freight agent. And that can include rating, that can include finding trucks, that can include selling, that can include cold calling, a lot of the same stuff that I go over in my trainings, right? And so I think an ongoing training program will be very helpful. I also think that having some sort of a standard operating procedure in regards to a document of the how-to, like how to submit a new client to corporate so that they can get approved for credit. You could have a document that outlines that. You could also have how to enter a load in the TMS, which gives them the step-by-step. You could give them what to do in event of a claim so that they know how to handle that and communicate that to you and to the shipper and to those things. So you can create those standard operating procedures that are based around the freight agent business. So those are a few things. I mean, there are tons of things. You could also provide them with marketing materials that help them to build credibility, including things like social proof of, of other shippers that are doing business with the company. You could provide them collateral marketing materials. You could provide them a good website that you guys have built as a support tool and a credibility and a rapport building tool. And there's a lot of things you can do. I did all of these things, just so you know, every single thing that I just shared with you, I've done, right? And more. So you asked for a short list. There's a bit of a short list. That's not the entire list, but that's a short list. Thank you, Sugar Plum. Thank you very much. Appreciate the kind words. This is a good question, Grant. I'm about to start as an agent with Landstar. I see they have somewhat of a negative reputation online. I have to be the best agent my clients deal with. How do I overcome pre-existing bias? Well, the way you overcome pre-existing bias is you acknowledge the fact that there's a bias. You acknowledge the fact that there are mixed reviews about Landstar and that they may have had some experience, a negative experience in the past. But here's why I'm different. And here's why you can trust me. And here's why my clients do business with me, right? And so you don't want to hide the fact that Landstar sometimes has a bit of a sketchy reputation, depending upon who you ask. They're a large company. Here's what I can tell you. If you build a multi-billion-dollar company, not everybody's going to like you either. I can promise you that. So I don't hold anything against Landstar. They're a big, big company. They've been around for a very long time. And yes, of course, they make mistakes. Sometimes those are mistakes where they hire agents and employees and staff and drivers that aren't the best, and they cause service-related issues. Sometimes they just make mistakes as a whole, right? And how they handle difficult situations with shippers or with drivers or with brokers or agents. And so here's what I can tell you. Don't try to hide the fact. If somebody brings up the fact that, they had a bad experience with Landstar, that's fine. Just say, listen, I completely understand that you had a bad experience, but let me explain. Give me 1 minute to explain why I'm different and how I've addressed this and why I decided to partner with Landstar. And if you explain that and you explain the differences and what makes you different and why they can trust you, you will have an opportunity. I can't promise that they're all going to become your clients, but that's how you can start to overcome the pre-existing bias. So I hope that helps. As well as the fact, what will definitely help, I want to throw this in here, if you can build any social proof, meaning if you have clients that you've done business with that are willing to write you a testimonial or a recommendation, or better yet, shoot a video testimonial, right? Talks about why they can trust you, why everybody can trust you, why they trust you, and why they should do business with you. That will go a long way into overcoming those pre-existing bias. It's called social proof. Hope that helps. Thanks, Grant. You know, it's interesting, Rena. Is there a best time to contact shippers, like early in the morning, or is any time of day good time to contact, ask about becoming a customer? All right. This is a question I get all the time, and I don't think there's any perfect time. I really don't. But I will tell you this. You will, how do I explain this? What I like to do is I like to try to call when other brokers aren't calling. So it's sometimes, you know, if I know that the typical hours are 8 to 4, but I also know that shipping managers typically are not going to just be there 8 to 4. They're going to have to get in a little early. They're going to have to stay late. It's a very demanding job. Shipping managers, traffic managers, logistics managers. It's not a very typical 8 to 4, 9 to 5 job, right? They have to do their job until the job is done, right? And so they're typically multitasking, wearing a variety of hats. So if you were to not wait till 8 o'clock and you were to call at 7:35 or 7:45 or 7:50, you might be able to get some shippers on the phone that you're struggling to get on the phone during normal business hours because the phone's not ringing like crazy. You also might be able to get them after normal business hours at 4:15 or 4:30 or 4:45. You also may be able to get them on their lunch hour because sometimes they'll come back. A lot of times I would come back and I would call at 12:45 right before the lunch hour is over. So I'm giving you a few tips, but I can't give you the perfect time. There is no perfect time. The perfect time is, you know, it's that old adage, right? If you wait for all the lights to turn green before you head to work in the morning, you're always going to be late, right? It's that old adage. So I would say call often, try varying times from AM to afternoon, and try to find out what's working best for you. But there is no perfect time, but those are a couple of little tips on how you might be able to increase the number of contacts, particularly with people that you're struggling to get on the phone during normal times. So hope that helps. Okay, so Dove asks, hi, Dennis, I'm a student. How do I operate without the majority of the carrier liability falling on me? Okay, so just so you understand, as a part of the process, shippers have a certain amount of liability, for example, loading the truck properly. Carriers have a certain amount of liability in regards to when they sign the bill of lading and accept the shipment all the way through to delivery, right? Until the receiver signs the clean bill of lading and accepts the shipment. So the shipper has that liability. And then the broker has a certain amount of liability, but the liability for brokers is very, very limited. Your liability is really based on negligence. So your liability is to just make sure that the carrier has an operating authority, has proper insurance in the event that there is some sort of an issue legally and from a coverage perspective, right? You're not going to put a carrier who only has $20,000 worth of cargo insurance on a load that is worth $50,000, because if you did, then potentially you have liability because you didn't make sure that. So brokers have very limited liability in the big scheme of things because they don't touch the freight. They don't load it. They don't unload it. They don't drive it, right? They're not the carrier. And so broker liability is very, very limited. And it's limited to the point where they would have to prove negligence on your part. So if you loaded a carrier that did not have a proper operating authority, then you could be found negligent. So doing due diligence and vetting carriers and understanding how to do background check on a carrier is important. But beyond that, making sure that you vet the carrier properly, there's not a ton of liability. Now, there could be if you give a carrier misinformation or give them wrong information or things of that nature that leads to some sort of a claim. But ultimately, as long as you're not negligent, you're typically not going to have any sort of an issue. Most of the liability falls on the shipper, the carrier, and the receiver. All right, so Michelle asks, I've done cold calling in call center prior to this, and my question is, would it be okay to do a standard close like, I'm going to add you to our valued shipper list, okay? I think that that is a good trial close. I don't think it's going to close the deal and get your shipment, but I think it's a good trial close because if you make that statement and they don't give you any resistance, then it's giving you a read on that prospect. Now, that's not a close that I've ever used, but I'm commenting on the close that you had mentioned. So this is what I call a trial close. And this trial close can then give you a read or tell you the temperature, whether they're cold or they're warm or they're hot, in which where you can ultimately go to the close, right? So, that's what I would suggest. I think that's a good trial close to use as a part of your process. If you're used to and comfortable with that, then feel free to use it. It's going to definitely give you a good read. And I think that trial closes are a very, very important part of the sales process. And that's definitely something we will definitely be going over in the new Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. So hope that helps. Good question. Gerinder Lewis asks, how important is it to learn the equipment that will be used by carriers? If so, will you do a video on different types of equipment? Okay, so yeah, understanding the different types of equipment. If you're specializing in vans, then you want to understand the nuances of vans, what weight they can load, the lengths, the dimensions, things like, the fact that it needs to back up to a dock or a lift, or you got to have some sort of a lift gate, or you got to have some way to load it. So there's nuances associated with every type of equipment, including van, refrigerated, flatbed, heavy haul, power only, everything in between. So yeah, I would definitely say you'd want to do your due diligence, and I will definitely add that as a topic for future training, where we could do kind of an overview on what you need to know about each piece of equipment. So I'm going to jot that down right now. Got it. All right. Good suggestion, Geringer. Thank you. You don't need any, what bank do you recommend to set up your account with for a new brokerage? You don't need anything special. You could use a local bank. You could use a credit union. You could use a local bank. You could use a national bank. Doesn't really matter. Whatever bank you're comfortable with. Probably a bank you already have a relationship with. So that's where I would start. Carl asks, how do we build credit with carriers that won't call you back? Well, the way to build trust and credit is, number one, if you let them know, if you partner with a factoring company, they're going to probably feel a lot more comfortable because they know that you're going to get your money quickly, right? You're not going to make them wait, a month or two to get paid. So if you do partner with a factoring company, that's probably going to help a lot. Number two, you could give them a quick pay. If you decide to give them a quick pay without any sort of a fee, you could pay them in 1 day or 5 days in order to build trust in a relationship. Another thing you can do is you can call all the major factoring companies and have your brokerage get set up as a broker account with them. Now, you're not going to use all those factoring companies, but what you want to do is get set up and have an actual credit account with each one of those factoring companies, because every time a carrier calls their factoring company, if that factoring company doesn't find the broker in their database, then they're going to automatically say no. But if you get set up with all the major factoring companies, and then the carrier calls in and they do have a file for you, they do have a record of you, they do have a profile for you, at that point, the odds of them saying yes, at least for a small amount of credit, is probably much, much higher. So those are a few tips. The other thing is credit is just like anything else, right? It takes time. But if you get the first load that you move with the first carrier, ask them to make sure they report you to the major credit reporting agencies, maybe even incent them to report you to the major credit reporting agencies so you can start building that credit. Most carriers are not going to have an issue. Some will. Larger companies, the large carriers are probably going to tell you no, but smaller carriers, which is what makes up the bulk of the industry, I think the last stat I read is like 86 or somewhere between 86 and 90% of all carriers out there own less than 10 trucks, right? So they're typically small carriers. Most of them are going to do business with you. It shouldn't be a huge issue. You will from time to time say you're too new, but in most cases you won't, especially on just one load, and especially if they need that load, right? It's limited risk for them. Good question. Thanks for asking. Here's a good question. I've answered this question hundreds of times, but I'll answer it for you, Eduardo. I had a good conversation with a shipping manager, but after I told him I was a broker, he told me they don't work with brokers, but I don't think he's true. Should I keep trying? In most cases, you're correct, Eduardo. What he's telling you is not true. They do business with brokers. They just don't want to do business with you. And here's why: because they don't trust you. The fear of doing business with you and bringing on a new vendor is bigger than the rewards associated with bringing on a new vendor and trusting you. So I used to love it when shippers used to say, I don't do business with brokers, because I would say at that point, great, I'm glad you said that. Let me explain to you why I'm different and why I have numerous clients that said the exact same thing prior to doing business with me. Could you give me 1 minute to share why I'm different? And in most cases, they are going to give you an opportunity to present your value. Now, I can't promise you that the value that you explain to them is going to work. That's something you have to do. You have to describe the benefit and the reason why they should trust you and why they need to do business with you, right? So if somebody says they don't do business with brokers, I wouldn't automatically hang up the phone. I would simply focus on trying to differentiate yourself why they need to do business with you, or why they should do business with you, or what the benefit of doing business with you is. Different is better than better. You're going to hear me say that over and over again as you follow me throughout my different trainings, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook or in my course or wherever you're at, or if you're in the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program that's coming up, you're going to hear different is better than better. So you need to differentiate yourself. And if you do that, you will get an opportunity. So you'll get an opportunity to plead your case. I can't promise that they're going to do business with you, but I can tell you that I had dozens and dozens of clients that I did business with, and their first objection to me was, we don't do business with brokers. And I used to love it, because I knew that if I could get them, if I could build that trust and I could start doing business with them, I'd have a huge opportunity, because they weren't doing business with every broker out there, right? They weren't doing business with 20 different brokers. And so it created a much better opportunity for me. So it was worth the effort to dig in and differentiate myself. So I hope that helps. All right. And just a reminder, guys, for those of you that are interested in getting signed up for the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator waiting list, right? This is the waiting list. If you're not on the waiting list, then the probability of you getting even notified or getting a chance to get into the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program is slim to none. So you got to get on the waiting list. All right. This program is going to go live probably in about the next week, which means everybody that's on the waiting list is going to get notified. They're going to get a message from me, and it's going to say, the card is open. You can get enrolled now. You then need to click and get enrolled, right? Because if you wait, I'm only letting 50 people in. We've already got over 100 people on the waiting list. And by the time we launch, we'll probably have 300 to 500 people on the waiting list. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't get in later. It just means in this first version where I'm only letting 50 people in, you may have to wait. The challenge is I'm offering a big discount on this founding group, this initial launch, because I'm going to be doing it live, right? So I'm going to be doing it live with you, including live trainings, including live Q&A, the whole 9 yards, through my entire sales system. So I hope that helps. And if you don't get in this first iteration, then you'll be able to get in future ones, but the price will go up. It'll probably double or triple in future releases. But I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are. This has been like 10 years in the making, okay? And I'm going to do everything I can to over-deliver, okay? So if you guys want to get on the waiting list, you absolutely need to go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/FB sales. Type it into your browser, get enrolled in the waiting list, and I will notify you very soon. So appreciate you guys being here. You guys asked some great questions today. Thank you so much. If I didn't get to your question, I'll try to come back later in the week and answer that in the comments. Truly appreciate you being here, whether you're on replay or live or whatever the case may be. If you enjoyed this training and you want me to do future trainings for free like this, make sure you like the stream. And most importantly, share the stream. Guys, it costs you nothing. I didn't charge you to get in this training. You're not, there's not some sort of recurring payment every week where I'm charging. They're absolutely free. If you want me to continue these free trainings, I need to see the interest from you, right? So I need to see that you guys are liking and sharing the stream. That's how I can tell whether the information is valuable to you. If I don't hear that, if I don't see that, then I'm providing no value. And I promise you I can find other things to do. And I'm sure you have better things to do as well. So have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. For those of you that are on the wait list, stay tuned. You're going to get notified of the release of the new program. It's going to be coming very, very soon. So pay attention when it hits, when you get that message, make sure you respond right away to get enrolled. So talk to you soon. Have an awesome week. See you next Monday in the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live.